I've tried buying other kinds of urethane mounts and other things to see if they would fit, but it doesn't really work with this body. There's quite a bit of movement that's required for this body to not rattle and be, flexible. So I'm going to actually try to recreate this body mount with new springs and new rubbers and new bolt. You can see at the top there is no rubber in there. It's just basically metal on metal. Here's the components that I'm going to use to make the body mounts. I've got some springs I ordered from a company called McMaster-Carr. They have a lot of specialty fasteners and springs and all kinds of things. You can order them any size and basically any spring rate. So I'm going to jack up this body on one joint at a time. You can see I'm using this transmission jack and a 2x4, and I'm going to slip in the urethane mount. Make sure it lines up with the hole, and then let it down. Simple as that. There it is with the spring in place. And I just I put a vice grip on the top bolt, and I can adjust the tension right here with a combination wrench. I ran into an interesting problem, and I found out that the truck doesn't always shut off. So that's on. It doesn't always stop running if I turn it to the off position. And I went online and found that's not an uncommon situation, because what happens is, the way the alternator is wired, it continues to send 12 volts into the system and keeps the fuel valve open. So what I'm going to do is, I found this switch. It's kind of an older switch. I bought a bunch of them, but that's an on all the time, and it's a instantaneous off. So I'm going to install it right here next to this starter switch, and when I want to turn the engine off, I just simply turn that off, push it down, let go of it, goes back in contact, and then I can shut the engine off, or shut this switch off and shut all the power. But that's my solution. For the brakes, I bought this drop-down brake pedal assembly from a company called Gearhead Industries, and the only modification I have to make is I'm going to have to weld a nut on here for my pedal, but everything else is cut out to fit right on the stud. So I'll just go ahead and bolt it right on there, and then this the ram that comes out of the brake booster will bolt right onto the lever, and I think it'll be in the right position. Everything's going to line up just great. So this is the bed, just in raw steel. I'm going to show it to you in this form so you can sort of see what's going on. These are 2x4 inch beams. They're 3/8 of an inch thick. They're in the middle, and this is because this pin represents where a pivot's going to go, and there's going to be a crane that comes out of the bed of the truck, but it folds away flat with a winch on top so that it can be a flatbed, small flatbed in the back. You can see I've got the places to put the wood ahead of it. I had to drop a little drop down at the back where the frame comes through, and this is where the bed clamps or bolts to the frame of the truck itself. So it took a lot of clamps, porta-power, and a lot of measurements to get it square and right and working, but I'm pretty happy with the way it's come out, and that's going to work out good. I've set up the actual crane tube. It's a 4-inch tube by 1/4-inch wall, and I'm using this long drill to drill a pilot hole through both sides, and then I'm going to have it all lined up, and then I'll use a Cobalt 1-inch drill to drill the final hole. If you're going to try to do this with a 1-inch shaft, I recommend a Cobalt drill. I think it was like $60. but well worth it because I'm turning it at the lowest speed possible, but it's still a lot of speed at the very end. And I tried another kind of drill, a carbon, normal carbon steel drill, did not work well. So there's the first hole drilled, pretty clean. I'm going to flip it over. My pilot hole is on the other side, and I can go ahead and cut it out. So I plasma cut a radius in the top tube, and I'm just going to grind that clean, and we'll see how it fits. I did my job right. All 8 of these holes, 1, 2, 3, 4, all 6 of these holes are going to line up, and this 1-inch shaft is going to hold it all together, and this thing will be able to raise up like a crane out of the bed, and it'll be hidden underneath the bed when you don't see, when you're not using it. So, see how it goes. Definitely a heavy piece. Put my ear muffs on because I'm going to be pounding that shaft in. Okay, we went through. It's supposed to be a tight fit because there's just a 1-inch hole with a 1-inch shaft, but that's what it's going to do, raise up like that. I'm making some flanges for the hydraulics. They're made out of 1/2-inch steel, not super accurate cuts, but what I did is, just as a hint, I'll see how this works, but I attacked them all together in 3 places so that the bottom is completely even on both of them, and that way when I drill them they'll line up. I'm going to do a test project here with the winch. So what I've done is I've extended my winch to come out over the crane, and I'm going to pull the crane out. So all I do is I take this pin out, and I can extend it out, go about that far, put the pin back in. Got it extended out there as far as it's as I want it to go. I'm not going to be lifting a ton of weight. I'm going to just take the back of my pickup. I've got a grater blade I'm going to pull out of there. To lift it, I've got these controls down here, and that just basically lifts up. I've hooked it up to the crane, and then I'm just going to go ahead and lift it up. This thing weighs about 1,000 pounds. Still raise it. So that's it, fully extended, and seems to work really well. The only body parts on this Power Wagon that hasn't survived the 75 years since it was built have really been these fenders. A little beat up down here. It's got some surface rust, but they're still thick. But this ran into multiple rocks and logs and things like that. And this, the right side fender has a divot for the spare tire. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do like on a motorcycle. I'm going to bob these fenders and then build them into my bed by cutting the parts off I don't want and just using basically half a curve. So what I'm doing now is I've taken that part of the fender. We need it to support the floorboard. That comes up here. I've cut out a section where this frame of the flatbed goes through. I'm going to weld a cap on here, and I'm going to tack it onto the actual body of the flatbed. And then back here, I want this to screw up to the wooden floor, which is going to go in here. So I'm taking this these vice grips, and I simply make my own portable brake, so you can, if you do it a little bit at a time, I can bend that over. Right along that line. There. So then I'll cut this off, I'll weld that, and then I'll screw it up underneath to the floorboard. This bracket by taking 2 angle irons and welding them together. Then I've taken the clamp that clamps the 2 pipes together in the exhaust stack, and I'm going to put 2 holes in here. I'm going to bolt it to that, then bolt it to the frame, and then it'll be completely solid. Sometimes they mounted these flatbeds to the frame using wood in between the bed and the frame. I'm going to use this material that's actually a commercial cutting board. It's kind of a polyethylene dense material. It has just enough give to make it so there's no squeaks in between the bed and the frame. Not that that's the biggest worry in a truck like this, but I think this stuff's going to work really well. It cuts with a circular saw, and I'll be able to put it underneath the clamped areas. This stuff just cuts like butter. So what I'm going to build a doghouse for inside the cab out of this barrel from a wheelbarrow. The reason is the thickness of the metal is perfect. It's got rounded corners. I've marked out some lines here. I'm going to have to section it and piece it together, but at least the part that shows in the cab will be rounded and it'll look more like production. Otherwise, I'd have to piece it together with sharp angles, and I don't have the equipment to bend a bunch of stuff, and it would take forever. So this is how I'm going to do it. So now I have my 2 main pieces that I need for one side, and then the other side, and then I'm going to have to weld strips in here to make it the right width and do some modification. I've tacked a couple pieces together, and now I'm going to weld them. So I'm left with these openings up top here, and the way I've solved that is I used a piece of paper and made a template and got these flat pieces here cut, and I just basically bent that by hand to form that curve, but it's still flat. So what's interesting is I tried my my bead bag, shot bag, and I tried these kind of hammers with the shot bag, but it was bending it in 2 directions. So here's what I've ended up doing. I just used the ball peen hammer, and I have a lip on the edge of my workbench, and I just start beating it till I start getting a curve to it, and this is what I've done. For the turn signals on the front, we have these I guess they're called blackout lights. They're real small in the front. So what I'm going to do is take off this cover and cut a hole in it and put a lens. The cover, when it comes off, it's heavy metal like everything else on the truck, and it's got this really nice rubber gasket which has survived all these years. In fact, the inside still looks good with the light. But I'm going to put this LED lens in it. I'm going to cut a hole this diameter in this surround, and I'll put it in there and we'll see how it works. There's the finished marker lights. Anything I carry with this Power Wagon has to be pretty securely fastened. So I've got these World War II canvas straps, and they come in a kit with these rivets, and you can make them to any size. And I've welded up a bracket here. It's just sitting on the back of my deck right now. And this is for a toolbox. My daughter actually gave me a World War II wooden box that was for some instruments, and I put in tools in that. And then these racks are going to be welded down to these base areas on both sides. This one here is going to hold the winch controls, and this one, of course. So I'll do a little walk around of the vehicle, ready to take its maiden voyage. So you can see the the big front bumper that I put on it. Got the numbers. We got the Invasion Star. You'll see we got a replica 50 caliber Ma Deuce machine gun with ammunition carrier. Canteen hanging off. There's the gauges. You'll see a little bit of wiring still hanging down. I still got some high-low beam and horn and a couple things to still figure out. I welded the old brake pedal onto our new lever. There's the doghouse that was fabricated out of a wheelbarrow. Shifter. You'll see that there's a compass out of an airplane on that doghouse. There's the floor with diamond plate steel, accelerator pedal. Got the seats, gas tank back here. Got a official jerry can holder. In the back we have a flatbed, and there's a crane that comes out of the back of it. You can see that. That also can extend out, and then there's a winch back here that we could use to make it make a crane out of it. Pintle hitch. There's the stack for the exhaust. There's that Ma Deuce. It's a toolbox. The toolbox, the canteen, and this little first aid kit from World War II was given to me by my daughter for Christmas, which was a really great present. Loved it. So that's the basic walk around of the vehicle. Take it outside and take it out for a drive. all-wheel drive.